Well, let's get started. As I said when we left on Monday, there was one of the World Heritage sites, one of the places. It's been described as the most beautiful building in the whole world, and that's the Taj Mahal. And we just took a look at South Asian art, and the Taj Mahal is not in there. But there's a caveat. Part of, I'm sure, the reason why it's not in there is that the book, the chapter, says South and South Asian art before 1200. And so what we have here, and it was the same thing that when I was in graduate school, I took Indian art, and he cut it off at the year 1200 too. And in part, it's because the Islamic influence moves through South Asia at this time, and it changes a lot of things. And so it, how should I say this? It's like a lot of things. We've seen this happen a lot. We've seen the advent of Christianity and how it moved to Europe and how it changed cultures, and pretty much Islam was a revolutionary religion, new ideas, and it took over. And so anyway, this video I'm about to show you, it's not the first one that I had in mind. In fact, I looked at a number of them, well, I found one that was really good, and when I tried to pull it up, I got this pop-up that said, hide my search. I was like, oh man. So anyway, I went on YouTube while we were gathering together, and I found this one. It looked like it was pretty promising. And so they tell the story of Shah Jahan. I want to kind of think about that for a minute. Shah. Well, that's kind of a new, as I was saying, it's not just a religion, it's the whole culture. The Shah is a term for king or emperor, and it comes from Persia. And in fact, what we had for a long time before the Iranian hostage crisis and the overthrow, the Iranian Revolution, there was a guy in charge, the Shah of Iran. And in fact, that's it. So anyway, we've got a whole new set of kings and a whole new royalty, a whole new religion, and that's what I'm gonna say.
The Taj Mahal, built in 1628 in Agra, England. Shah Jahan was the fifth ruler of the Mughal dynasty. During his third regnant year, his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal, died in childhood. Deeply saddened, the emperor started planning the construction of a suitable permanent resting place for his beloved wife. The result of his effort and resources was the creation of what was called the luminous tomb in contemporary living texts, and is what the world knows today as the Taj Mahal. In general terms, Sunni Muslims favor a simple burial under an open sky. The notable domed mausoleum for Mughals, as well as for other Central Asian rulers, was built prior to Shah Jahan's rule. So in this regard, the Taj Mahal is not unique. The Taj is, however, exceptional for its monumental scale, Stunning gardens, lavish ornamentation, and its overt use of white marble. Entry to the Taj Mahal complex via the forecourt, which in the 16th century housed shops and the monumental gate inlaid and highly decorated red sandstone, made for a first impression of grand splendor and symmetry. Aligned along the long river channel, through this gate is the Taj, set majestically in the raised mountain. The rectangular complex runs roughly 1,860 feet on the north-south axis and 1,000 feet on the east-west axis. The white marble mausoleum is flanked on either side by identical buildings in red sandstone. One of these serves as the mosque, and the other, whose exact function is unknown, provides architectural balance. The marble structure is topped on the northern one, surrounded by 4 minarets. While the minarets in Islamic architecture are usually associated with mosques for use by the muezzin who leads the public prayer, here they are not functional but ornamental, once again underscoring the movement focus on structural balance and harmony. The interior floor plan of the Taj exhibits the Hajj and Shivish, or 8 levels principle, alluding to the 8 levels of paradise. Consisting of 8 halls and side rooms connected to the main space in a cross-axial plan, the favorite design for Islamic architecture in the mid-15th century. The center of the main chamber holds Mumtaz Mahal's intricately decorated marble cenotaph and raised platform. The emperor's cenotaph was laid down beside hers after he died 3 decades later. Both are encased in an octagon of exquisitely carved white marble sleeves. The coffins bearing their names lies in spaces directly beneath the cenotaphs. Quranic verses inscribed into the walls of the building and designs inlaid with semi-precious stones of coral, onyx, carnelian, amethyst, and lapis lazuli add to the splendor of the Taj's white exterior. The dominant theme of the carved imagery is floral, showing some recognizable and other fanciful species of flowers, another linked to the theme of paradise. Some of the Taj Mahal's architecture confuses aspects from other Islamic traditions, but other aspects reflect the indigenous style elements. In particular, this is evident in the umbrella-shaped ornamental chapatras, or dome-shaped pavilions atop the pavilions and minarets. And whereas most Mughal era buildings tended to use red stone for exteriors and functional architecture, such as military buildings and forts, reserving white marble for special inner spaces or for the tombs and holding. The Taj's interior main structure is constructed of white marble, and the auxiliary buildings are composed of red sandstone. This white and red color scheme of the built complex may correspond with principles laid down in ancient texts, in which white stood for purity and the priestly class, and red represented the color of the warrior class. From the outset, the Taj was conceived of as a building that would be remembered for its magnificence for ages to come. And to that end, the best material and skills were employed. Mir of Al-Karim was designated as the lead architect. Abdul Haq was chosen as the collaborator, and Ustad Ahmad Mahari was made the supervisor. Shah Jahan made sure that the principles of Mughal architecture were incorporated into the design throughout the building process.
Uh-oh, I gotta get out of here. There. So I know that the sound was a little,
Hello, friends, and welcome to the architecture enthusiast.
oh, wait a minute. I don't want to see the Sydney Opera House, just saying. And so let me move this. There's that hide my history tab up there. But at any rate, I know the narration seemed to be kind of dry. But what I really liked was the video part where you could see the Taj Mahal from all of these different aspects. And there were a few points that were made that I think are really very important to know. And one is that this is Islamic architecture, and a lot of people talk about this as being one of the great examples of Islamic architecture. However, it was not entirely Islamic, and as he said in there, and I don't know if you guys heard it, he said they'd taken a lot of the designs and some of the architectural features came from the indigenous culture. That means the culture that was there before. And so a lot of this is Hindu. A lot of this, or some of this, you could recognize as Buddhist too. And so it's kind of an interesting mixture of all of this. And this is connected, this building, the Taj Mahal, is connected to what is a love story. And that is that this was a tomb for Shah Jahan's favorite wife. And let me see, here we go. And she died giving birth to like his 15th child, 14th or 15th child. And he loved her so much that he built this. This is essentially a mausoleum. And you saw where they are interned inside, right? Central in the main part of this mausoleum. And there are some other things too that I'd add, and that is that it has minarets, which is Islamic architecture. But as the narrator said, it was more for decorative purposes and it wasn't particularly functional. So it's a mausoleum and it's kind of mosque-like, and it has features of like the chakras of the Buddhist stupas and so on. So anyway, you saw the interior, the avoidance of creating images of people. Of course, they had a lot of floral motifs, and we've seen some of that in Islamic art, but the geometric pattern was predominant. And so anyway, I wanted you to know about that. You can't know about India without knowing the Taj Mahal thing. Yeah, okay, good. Let me see, slideshow. I want to move here to this. And I got some more video for you today. Because again, this is, the book doesn't really have as many pictures as I'd like. And I've been really kind of interested in having you get a sense of the scale and multiple views of these sites. And so China during the Tang Dynasty, and the Tang Empire was 618 to 906. So, ran about 300 years. And you can see here the Great Wall was already way in progress. And And this is a kind of interesting point too. You see, it includes parts of Vietnam here. There it is. And that's kind of an interesting aspect of Chinese culture, is that at one point or another, they had incorporated into their empire a lot of Southeast Asia. And so anyway, but here it is. And we're going to see this. This is the first thing that comes up in the chapter, and it's probably one of the most important finds of the 20th century. Army of the first Emperor Qin, in his pits next to his burial mound, Lintong, China, Qin Dynasty, roughly 200 BCE. So these things are 2,200 years old. And before we start, I'm going to see if this will come up. Yes. And I got to make sure I got to share for those folks at home. Come on. There it is. New share. There we go. Share. Play. Make it a large screen.
Hello and welcome to History Pod. On the 29th of March 1974, the Terracotta Army was discovered in Shanxi Province in China. A group of farmers discovered the sites of the ancient sculptures while digging a well near the city of Xi'an. On the fifth day of excavation, team member Yang Jifan uncovered pieces of a life-size terracotta warrior beneath a layer of hard red earth, and soon found other fragments of clay models alongside artifacts that included bronze arrowheads. Realizing that they had stumbled upon a potentially important cultural site, the farmers notified the local authorities, who in turn called for a team of archaeologists to investigate. One of the archaeologists, Zhao Kangmin, later revealed how we were so excited we rode on our bicycles so fast it felt as if we were flying. After retrieving a number of fragments from the site, he then spent time at the local museum, piecing together two 1.78-meter terracotta statues that confirmed his suspicions that the site dated back to the reign of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, who reigned in the 3rd century BCE. The find was initially kept secret for fear of the statues being destroyed by Red Guards caught up in the Cultural Revolution that had already destroyed other archaeological sites. However, it was later exposed by a journalist in a story that attracted the attention of officials in Beijing, who initiated a full-scale excavation. Thousands of sculptures have so far been uncovered, buried in an elaborate funerary complex estimated to cover more than 22 square miles. The Terracotta Army was found in battle formation in a series of deep pits, guarding the nearby tomb mound of their emperor that remains tantalizingly unexcavated.
And so that's how it's found. Let me add a little bit more to that, if you don't mind. This place existed for a long time. I got a corded mouse here, so. And let me make sure we got to share. We're good? Okay. What happened was that there was this huge mound right out in the middle of farmland. It was huge. It was like 200, 300 feet high, was very long. And it was just kind of popped up and it had always been there. And then as they showed you here, they found it, some farmers found it, 1974. So it's in a lot of ways, it's a very recent discovery. But they also showed the Red Guard. There's a lot of cultural turmoil in China. And there was talk about the Red Guard and destroying some of the artwork and the figures, statues and things. Well, there was the Red Guard was kind of it's a very radical group, and they really wanted, in a lot of ways, to erase China's past. And that was, that sounds horrific. And it is, I guess. But this is not unique to China. We had, for instance, in the Middle East, in Iraq and in Syria, we've had ISIS, and they were doing similar things to their ancient artifacts. And in fact, there was a city in Syria that was it was founded by the Romans 2,000 years ago. It was named Palmyra, and it was relatively intact. And ISIS came in and just blew it up. So anyway, and then talking about different periods of time, there were these rock carved Buddhist statues in Afghanistan, and the military came in and they were like actually shooting it with artillery shells. So these things happen, and it's one of the perils of finding ancient artifacts. But at any rate, this was here and nobody even knew it. There was something else that was in the video, and they talked about it was like 22 miles long. And a lot of it's underneath. And really what's gotten the attention is the terracotta army. Do you guys remember what terracotta is? Clay. Clay, that's exactly right. We make pottery out of terracotta.
So the things that they make entire clay.
That's exactly right. And we're still not exactly certain how this came about. We tend to believe that it has everything to do with the afterlife. And that would not be unique to China either. We've uncovered a lot of Egyptian tombs where the pharaoh is buried, and a lot of times more than just pharaoh, a lot of high priests and a lot of other dignitaries and royalty are buried, and they have all kinds of things buried with them to help them in the afterlife. But that's kind of what we think here. But as I was saying, they showed that sort of map that towards the end, that overall map. One of the aspects of this complex at Xi'an is that it's more than just the army. This is what they uncovered. And if you saw, well, we can't see it in that picture. I'm trying to, no, not in any of these pictures. They built a large building. It looks like a big aircraft hangar over the top of this. But they found that if they go into that mound farther and deeper, they found this place that looked like, they think it was Emperor Qin's headquarters. And it was perfectly preserved, and it had this big table in the middle, and it had the topical landscape right there in miniature, a model of the surrounding areas of the empire. And it was been theorized that this was where Emperor Qin would work out his strategy to defend his empire. He would, you see that in these World War II movies too, a big table and they're pushing the ships out, they say, or they'll push the armies out with, it's military planning, it's strategy. And so anyway, this was it, 2,200 years ago. And so one of the interesting parts of these terracotta warriors, and I think there's something like 2,200 of them, 2,200 figures. Two things. One is that they have removable heads. And you saw when the guy was excavating early on, they found the bodies and the heads, and he was putting them together, but the heads are removable, and you can see that. You can see that right there. There's one, there's another without the heads. The second aspect to this that's really quite interesting. Each one of these are individuals. No two are exactly alike. And so they have their, you can see here, they have mustaches and stuff out the fashion, but this guy is not that guy, nor is he this. And you know what I'm saying? They're all individuals. And it says the army, which also included bronze horses and chariots, guarded the emperor's still unexcavated burial mound. And so what I was talking about, his headquarters, that's part of this whole complex too. And I do want to show you this, if I can get to it. Modules. I had a film on this too. Another film, I believe. Let me run this through. Oh, I think that's the same one I just showed you. Oh man, this thing is hide my history. This pop-up stuff is killing me. Anyway, let's go back to the power. And let me make sure the share is correct. It is. And so anyway, here is another example of this. The video I was going to show you just got hide my history. I'll tell you about it. It has everything to do with more recent discoveries here at Emperor Qin's tomb. And it has to do with the fact that when they excavated this site, they didn't have the knowledge or the technology to do it properly. And so since the time of this original excavation, they have been, A, they've been finding more, and B, they found out that these figures were all painted. They weren't this terracotta gray. They were all painted, and they found out that once they unearthed these figures, the air hit it, the paint just immediately started falling off, and the humidity finished the job. And so then what they had done, what they have been doing since then, is that they're doing this a little bit more scientifically. They unearthed it, they covered it with plastic, they do things, keep the humidity out and stuff. And as well, as I showed you, that aircraft hangar kind of building that's over the top of this, that controls the climate as well. But they have a few, if you go there, you can see this. It's a tourist attraction. Like a lot of these places, you saw the people going to Taj Mahal. You know, you can see people going to the pyramids in Egypt and the Colosseum. So bottom line though, they have examples of these figures as they look originally. They're kept in climate control. And you can see, and they had some pictures of them that, and they look very realistic when they're painted. So I want to say this, the QIN. There's a lot of things about Chinese and translating it into English. And the Q is the more recent way that we spell this, but it's still pronounced Chin. And this is the guy for whom, this is the dynasty for whom China was named. And so he wasn't the first ruler, but he was the first emperor of China. And so anyway, the authorities in China have grown to be very protective of their sites and their heritage and archaeological digs and stuff, as are many countries in the world. They're finding that they want to preserve the heritage in that. So, check this out. Pottery. Look at the date. This is 4,600 years old or so. Well preserved. And check out the patterning, the decoration, the artistic value. And so we've seen this before too. We've seen this in Greece, where they had spent a lot of their artistic creativity decorating their pottery. One thing that's different though, this predates it by 1,000 years or more. And so the Chinese have been a high, have had high culture, as South Asia. These cultures, in some respects, some of them just really predate what we've seen in Mesopotamia and in Egypt to some extent. So, so it goes back and look, I'm kind of amazed that they just have them all together. I'm putting it in a box and anyway, here we go. Check this out. 11th or 12th century BCE. This is cast bronze. And so that was like a big deal. The Bronze Age in Europe. It immediately followed the Stone Age, and it's roughly about the same time. But they were able to do some very elaborate artwork. And so what would you think this figure is? Carter, you're good at picking this stuff out. What is it?
It looks like a giraffe combined with a monkey, combined with a puppy,
Oh,
combined with like one of those, what is it? One of those glasses that like you can pour something into, like the puppy, giraffe, monkey mixed on the top.
you were
Glass.
EWER, yeah, it's something that holds water,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
A pitcher, you were a pitcher, absolutely, yeah.
I can tell. Let's see the handle on the back.
Yeah, yeah, you can see. And we've seen some of this before too in other cultures halfway around the world. Similar kinds of objects across time and across vast distances. And so what's happened here, I talked to you on Monday about Jungian psychology and these ideas that those sacred symbols appear all over the globe and nobody really knows how they were interconnected. There's a lot of discussion among anthropologists about a lot of these kinds of things too. It's not just something like the swastika or the spiral or the wheel or things like that. There's actually a lot of things, and we talked about some other things. I just showed you from India, a man with a bull's head, which is exactly like the Minotaur from the Palace at Knossos, yeah, in Crete. Absolutely, you're on it. Yeah, Nathaniel, you good. Anyway, yeah, we see this. I would say this is a dragon, though. I would think that's the. But at any rate,
Yeah, it's gonna take a little dragon master. Basically, like, you know, like, I've heard of like a Chinese for like New Year, they have a little dragon mask involved.
yeah, it's still with us today. Yeah, and they
Yeah,
have the,
That's what makes me think.
and that's a very good point. And yeah, if you've been to Chinese New Year's festivals and things, you see these people dress up in a dragon costume. Which reminds me of Carter in his SpongeBob costume. Except there would be like about 8 or 10 people and they're all holding this up and it's got a big dragon's head.
Yeah, I've seen those before. I think those are they're really cool.
They are really cool. And you would see, I think, some of the similarity in how that dragon's head appears. Some of the time, not everything's exactly the same, but that it's very similar to what we're seeing here. And it would show you the continuity and the strength, the longevity of some of these traditions. And so anyway, standing male figure, this is kind of an interesting sculpture. And I don't know, have we seen anything quite like this?
Get long.
Yeah, it's very elongated, very what we would call stylized. It's stylized is kind of a nice word, an artistic word for having exaggerated features, you know.
Looks like it's holding 2 cups. And it's like just has 1 cup of water in this hand, 1 in the other, drinking water, all the time.
Yeah, it could be absolutely that. And this figure is, I don't know, maybe
A pig.
a mask,
Pig.
a pig. It's got some sort of headdress too, which is something that we see across cultures over time. Particular headdress symbolizes importance or authority. It denotes your position in the culture, whether you're the king, the shaman, the general, whatever. And it goes across culture. I mean, like all over the world. I mean, we're gonna talk, I'm hoping we'll get to talk about indigenous cultures in the United States, but if you've even seen, say, like something like these old Western John Wayne movies, for example, which are historically BS. But there's some things that are really kind of true to life about them, and that is that the head of the tribe of this community, he's got the headdress and he has all of the feathers. And as you move down in rank, less feathers. Headdress as a symbol of authority or importance. Been going on. It's been on for 3,000 years here, and it was going on in Mesopotamia and Egypt and so on and so on. But the other thing I want to kind of point out here too is that when we see some Aztec and Mayan cultures, you'll probably recognize some similarity in the style, especially this part, the headdress and the mask. It's very prominent in those cultures, which gets to another theory. We don't know yet, but they're working on it. And that is that a lot of scientists are starting to believe that maybe the Americas, that maybe the Chinese actually navigated the Pacific Ocean and found themselves in North America, South America. But what we do know is that there was this trade route from China through the Middle East and to all the way to Western Europe, and it was called the Silk Road. And so we know there's a lot of influence, and we know that in some cases, like say Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE, he and his army made it all the way to South Asia. In fact, he talked about being in the Indus Valley region. And we got writings. They have actually, they kept record of their journeys. Yes.
It looks like a slightly burnt cookie
Yeah, it does.
or donut even. The donut's the word. It looks like one of those like crunchy cookies that are like not like soft and stuff,
Yeah.
that are like hard as a rock.
Yeah. You know what? You got me here too. I don't think it's really a cookie, but I just realized nephrite. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I think it's a stone. I think it's kind of like a quartz or something, just by the name. So don't fight it. But dragons, again, we see dragons all over the world too. And they exist across time. Funerary banner from 2-1. See, this is we're getting close to the time of the Greeks and Romans here. And so we know what we know is that we're very skilled. And you know, it's kind of interesting. They sort of use some of the same conventions. What I mean is that the same kind of style or strategy that we see in other places too. And so I'm not exactly sure what all of this means, but what you say that this is, say, like an angel. And I'm thinking that this has everything to do with the burial. Oh, zoom in on this a little bit. Burial, the mourners, into heaven, having an afterlife. And so flying horse, Han Dynasty, that's roughly 600 or so. Han Dynasty 113 BC, late. But check this out, incense burner. Really important. Model of a first century Han house. But I do wanna, oh. Every time I wanna jump ahead, I got something I wanna make a point of. Buddhism spreads to China. Buddhism becomes really the largest religious belief in China for a long, long time. And so we do have Buddha. And this is gilded bronze. You know what gilded means? It's bronze with a gold leaf covering. So that's real gold on there. And so, yeah, Buddhism comes into China. And I do want to show you on that note, well, see, there's some rock carving sculpture. Well, we've seen that in South Asia as well. One of the things that happens when Buddhism arrives in China, some of the imagery, some of the statues and paintings and things, they change a little bit. And one thing that changes here, it's just like something happens in China. This. Yeah,
It kind of reminds me of how like people like stretch their earlobes out to put like some earrings into.
yeah, that happens in a lot of places across the world too.
Yeah.
It does look like that, but I showed you the other day the Ganesha and the elephant, and he had big ears. Ganesha has big ears, and it has everything to do with listen a lot, listen carefully, listen more than you speak. And so that's kind of part of what this is symbolizing. In Ganesha, it's an elephant, but this is a Buddha, and it's got big ears too. And that's really what this means. Standing Bodhisattva, this is someone who's achieved enlightenment, but came back to help others find their way. Another Buddhist, but here, I'm gonna run up ahead here because I really want to show you this. Ong Si Pagoda, Yingjian, China. And so one of the things that I was telling you about the stupas is on top, they have these chakras and these little, what look like almost like umbrella shapes, and they as they go higher, they get smaller. And that is the inspiration for this kind of architecture. This is a pagoda, and it is a holy place. I want to show you this one here, the Temple of Six Banyan Trees in Guangzhou.
Dang, that is the tallest temple I've ever seen.
Wow.
Never seen a temple like that before.
How do they make a structure like that? That would surprise me.
It's just
Yes, straight up. And part of the reason I wanted to show you this is that I had the honor of I went here. And I climbed up to the top of this too. And so they let you, it's kind of like, it's like in a public square and what we have here, this is they're burning incense here, stuff and around the bottom, various Buddhist statues. But yeah, you can go in here and go up. And one of the things that happens here is that you can, as is practiced in many religions, you can circumambulate. In fact, you go in one door and you kind of go around, and you can go up the stairs to the next level. And each level has a Buddha. And it's there so that you can meditate, pray. And one of the interesting parts of this is that as you go up, obviously the rooms are smaller. And so by the time you're up at the top, you're really, it's really tight. But anyway, it was beautiful. And again, like I say, Chinese are really have kind of found that preserving their heritage is really such a good thing. And this is Guangzhou, a city in southern China, and it used to be called Canton. And if you ever see Chinese cuisine and they say Cantonese, this is a place. Well, in fact, it's such a major city. The American consulate is there, which is why I was there, because I adopted a little girl from China and we had to go through the thing. Those of you who are international students know pretty much what I'm talking about. But anyway, beautiful. The 6 banyan tree pagoda in Guangzhou. And here it is. This is there's built in 537 temple's proximity to foreign consulates. Hey, in Guangzhou, it's made it a regular destinations for family participating in the international adoption of children from China. Typically, families receive blessings for their newly adopted children at this temple, and they did. And in fact, there are a lot of Buddhist monks around here. We had lunch with a couple of them. Their English was good. Anyway, it was awesome. And the Chinese have always been known for their scrolls, this is ink and colors on silk. So they do ink paintings on silk. And one of the things that they do, you'll see it, this red stamp down here. This is the artist put his or her mark on this. But basically what they would do would be only kind of use part of the space. And in this case, it just kind of goes out into what you might imagine to be fall out into the clouds maybe, but mountain path in spring. And here you'll find a saying, a quote, or a poem. And they have this relationship between the written word and the painted image. And so, yeah, you can see these are ink on silk. This is at the Nelson, by the way. And here, there's the proverb. Bodhisattva Guan Yin seated on, and Guan Yin shows up here. That was the statue in front of the 6 banyan tree. But at any rate, it's 6 o'clock. And you know what that means? That means if you were in the military, it'd be $1,800. But, you know. But what it means for us is this.
It's time for quiz 5.
Yeah, you've been looking at the calendar. Yes, it is.
I saw the notification.
Yeah, me too.
Same here.
Yeah. Good. Good. And quiz 5, basically what I want you to do, and this is kind of part of, as we're kind of moving around the globe, I really want you to see some of the connections that, like, say, I've been talking about and today and through the entire class. It says here to choose one example from 3 different chapters of artworks. And so each chapter is a time period or sometimes a whole culture. When we do the Aegean cultures, that's all we get. But Greece is a long chapter, but Europe has a few chapters, but they divide up. And what I want you to do is go through the text, or you can go to the PowerPoints too, because I leave the figure numbers on them. But say, I'll give you an example. We just talked about a rock cut relief in India that showed Shiva battling the bull-headed monster, I think it was called. Anyway, we saw that figure, that hybrid, the man bull. Well, we've seen that kind of creature in almost every culture. We didn't see it in Gothic Christian, but we have seen it a lot. But what I'm talking about is ideal beauty. And that comes up a lot. That comes up quite often. I mean, in Egypt, Greece, they're into that. We have tenets of religious belief, how pictures inform the viewer as to the tenets, the belief system. And so you could use, and it's a lot of it, you could use iconography. You could say, how is iconography used? We see in Christian that Saint Theodore has a sword because he's a dragon slayer. We see that in other cultures. So what describe and compare how and why the works you chose for your theme, the purpose of the work, are similar and different among your 3 examples. So I only want 2 pages, and you got 3 examples, and I think that's about right. You don't have to go like really deep, but you can talk about religious monuments, or you can talk about mosques, cathedrals, temples, how they're alike, how they're different. There's a lot of things, and basically what I want you to write about, what I want you to think about, is how these things are really pretty much similar around the world. And if you want to go up ahead, this last few chapters, you want to take a look at, say, Mayan culture and Mayan pyramids, and talk about pyramids at Giza, some whatever. They're similar kind of structures in Mesopotamia, so on. The minaret, the spire, stuff like that. So you guys use only examples from textbook and identify by the illustration note. And so it's due November 13th. And so what's today? The 9th. And so that is, I believe that should be Monday night. Today's the 9th. It opens right now.
It's Sunday.
Sunday night. Oh, wait, I was gonna give you guys Monday on that too. That'd be it.
And it only needs to be like 2 pages long.
Right.
Yeah, because I didn't see while reading like how long it had to be.
Yeah, it's up front. Yeah. And so it's due the, wait. Today's 9th, 10th.
Just the nine. Well, to that calendar right there.
Sunday night, let's make it due Monday night. And then leave it open an extra day. Yeah. So it's due on the 14th. I'll leave it open until the 16th for those of you who need extra time. Yeah, and it's safe, but yeah, Blake, here you go, a 2-page paper. And so I'm not really asking for a bibliography or anything like that. In fact, with this, I got to get on edit again. I'll show you. I excluded from this, it says, turn it in, exclude bibliography and quotes. So we'll deal with that some other time, but I didn't want you to get caught on that. Because basically what you're doing is looking for some trends across cultures. And it's due midnight on Monday. And so if you're having trouble, like always, you can send me an email and we'll be in here on Monday. And if you got any questions you want to bring up to me, I'm good with that. And so I got bills. I gotta pay. I gotta work every day. So that'll be it. You guys have a great weekend. And we will meet again on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet, Olivia. So I sent you a copy of that. I asked.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure you got it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. You got it. You too. You too, Arthur. Now it's time to say